right, welcome back to another episode of the Psychopedia podcast. I am your garrulous co-host, here with my assiduous and effulgent co-host.
Investigator confused.
Been using a vocab app.
Apparently.
And I'm crushing it.
No shit.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot of words.
You sound amazing.
Assiduous means hardworking.
Okay.
Effulgent means radiant, brilliant.
Wow. Wait, which ones went with me again?
Those two.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Garrulous means talking a lot, especially about things that are not important.
Don't call my friend garrulous.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for
Defending you against you?
Yeah, I'm my own worst enemy.
I know.
For real.
I'm not going to stand for it. Not here.
We made a little announcement on Instagram.
We made a not so little announcement on Instagram.
We made a gigantic announcement.
Tank made a gigantic announcement.
Tank made a tank-size announcement on Instagram. We're going to go on tour.
Yes.
Because the show in New York went so well, and we were so pleased with the response from people, and it just went really well. Like, I think, obviously, the people enjoying it made it much better.
Made it everything.
But I think I still would have felt good about it. Because, like, when you're a comedian, sometimes you're like, you nail a show and the people aren't, like, really into it. You don't feel that, like, you're like, I did good. I did my job.
Good for you, though, for being able to recognize that and maintain it. Although,
yeah.
Have you ever really seen a crowd not respond to you? Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I can't imagine that.
But then there are times where the crowd is responding like crazy, and you're like, you walk off stage, you're like, I fucking sucked.
Oh.
This didn't feel right.
Eesh.
So, point is, I felt great before, during, and after that performance. So we want to take it on the road.
Yes, we do.
And we're gonna.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes, sooner rather than whatever. And
the vocabulary app does not work on pronunciations.
Yeah, no, it's not an enunciation app. Okay. And we're going to come to a city near you. So
we are. So if you would like to visit that post, because we'll keep checking it, I'm sure. We asked for people to just kind of like list the city that they either live in or they'd be willing to travel to see us.
Yep.
And then we're going to put together a little route to take / huge route to take. We're going to go abroad.
We are coming to London. People were like, London? Yeah, that's like our first stop. Dublin? Yeah, Dublin. I'm moving there.
I would love that. Not you, but like I would love to live there.
Oh my God. 6 months out of the year?
Visiting there, I never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. So we're going to tour, and that is a huge move for us, but also could not have even been on our radar at this stage in the game if it wasn't for all of our listeners / viewers at this point, because we're on YouTube now as well.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you to everybody for all of the absolute, like, unwavering support since day one. We feel it constantly, and it is honestly driving us forward in this crazy, crazy gig.
First of all, it's going to be the pinned post on Instagram, Psychopedia Pod.
Smart.
Okay. Second of all, those of you who have been supporting us from day one, thank you. Those of you who have been supporting us since 2 minutes ago, thank you also. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. If this is your 100th time listening to the podcast, welcome home.
Freak. What I want to say to clarify is if people who have supported us from their day one, not necessarily our day one.
Yes.
Whenever you joined us, thank you for your support.
Whenever you did, yeah. This is a journey that is unending and going on forever.
Yes.
So, thank you. Also, speaking of support, like, review, rate, subscribe, share. I'm big on sharing right now. I want people to say, I want DMs from people going, my friend Ronnie sent me your podcast. He used to be all about zip lines, but now he loves the true crime podcast, and now I'm hooked.
Yeah, guys, Thanksgiving is coming up, so maybe talk about it at the Thanksgiving table, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like bring everybody into the psycho fold with you.
Because it's not just a true crime podcast, and it's not just a comedy podcast.
It's a crimedy cod. Oh no, I screwed that up.
It's a crimedy cod pod. No, it's like everything. We talk about everything during this podcast.
We do.
It's so much fun for me to do. I know it's fun for you also. Obviously.
I'm positively giddy from start to finish.
Yes. And if you already love us and you're not getting enough of what you need, head on over to patreon.com/psychopediapod, where you will be getting more content than you know what to do with. You're going to have to ration it out, I feel like. There's a lot. You get 5 extra episodes a month, depending on which level you're at. You get behind-the-scenes stuff. You get pictures of Slater with her twin when they were 8 years old. You get a lot of stuff. We do a lot of stuff on there. Book club, private group chat. It's a lot of fun. I'm on there all the time.
Yeah, it's such a good time over there.
It's just another way for us to connect, okay? If you're on YouTube, do your part, leave a heart. I'm going to read off a couple of patrons' names. First one's for you, Slater or Die. And I know what they were going for. They
Skate or Die.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
That was good.
I allowed it.
I love it.
Like, I have no problems with that. Vicky Lee.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi, Vicky. Shirtless Instapic. And I know what you're talking about, and I don't like it, but I think you deserve attention anyway.
I love it, however.
Don't scroll back on Tank Sinatra to 2015, okay? Do it. You look great for a bald old cunt.
Hell yeah.
That's a Patreon name.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Adam South.
What's up, Adam?
And then one is for me, one is for you. Oh my God, just fucking kill me.
That's me, isn't it?
Oh, that's me.
Oh, really?
Because I'm always joking about wanting to be dead.
Oh, God. I thought it was like because when you like don't stop like making fun of me or like teasing
it may
me,
be that.
I'm like, oh my God, just kill me.
It may be that.
I think it is.
I like to think it's a reference to the fact that we were talking about the death penalty and I said, I wish somebody would come in here and give me the death penalty right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've said that more than once.
No, once I said that specifically, but I'm jealous of people who are dead.
Okay, well, there it is.
Sure. And Brenda's Beaver Needs a Barber. Hello to you.
I'm going to purchase that book and I'm going to put it out on the table here.
Sure.
I must.
Do it.
I just want to say one quick thing because I saw on one of our posts on Instagram, somebody said, I'm so excited to join Patreon. I really want to, but I can't think of a name, so I'm holding out.
Oh, you don't have to.
Somebody responded to that being like, same. Guys, you do not have to come up with like a clever, witty name at all.
Adam South, Vicky Lee.
We see and love you
all
the same. We just want you to be part of our family over there. So
and we're not reading off more fun names because they're more fun. There's just more names like that than there are people who put their real name up there.
Right. I just
proportion.
I want to bring everybody over there. You don't have to be creative and come up with something. Just being there is what we appreciate.
Your Patreon name can be your name. I actually have said that I like that too, because then it's like, oh, this is an actual person.
Right.
I don't know who fucking Brenda's Beaver Needs a Barber is.
I just love that so much. Every time it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I'm 5.
It's good. All right. So without any further ado, let's get into the shabusiness of this week's case, of which I am clueless, right?
Very, very intense case.
Oh.
But one that I think in the end you'll be pleased with.
All right, very good. I'm sure I will. So let's get into this week's case.
Okay. Within the realm of mythology, the phoenix rises as one of the most potent symbols of resilience and strength.
I have a tattoo of a phoenix, not like Ben Affleck. Mine's cool.
This legendary bird, which cyclically regenerates or is reborn, emerges from the ashes of its own fiery demise, renewed and more powerful than ever. The story of the phoenix transcends legends, cultures, religions, and eras, and resonates deeply within the human psyche as an emblem of enduring spirit and indomitable will.
That's right.
In literature and philosophy, the phoenix has been a metaphor for the human condition, illustrating that true strength is not the absence of hardship, but the ability to rise again after being consumed by it, even if you are hearing the wet sound of your own flesh being ripped open.
Oh, God.
And your head nearly cut clean off. Even if you've been assaulted, stabbed, slashed, sliced, and disemboweled.
What?
Even if your attackers walk away from your eviscerated body on the side of the road and leave you to die alone and rot like roadkill, never to be thought about again. Confident that no living creature would be able to survive the level of brutality inflicted upon you.
No.
But you see, these attackers that I speak about underestimated the strength and spirit of the woman we are discussing today. A woman who, like the phoenix, triumphed over death to metaphorically rise from the ashes of her horrific experience and emerge more powerful and resilient than ever before.
Obviously.
This woman, who is indeed very real and whose harrowing journey defined by unfathomable pain and pure horror, became the crucible in which her unbreakable will was forged. This is the case of Alison Botha, or as I am calling her, the green-eyed South African phoenix.
I think I saw something
I think
about
you
this.
may have, because I spoke about it with Jessica a while back, and she mentioned that she saw it. So I'm guessing you guys watched it together, if this sounds familiar.
No, I've seen like comments or something or DMs asking people to cover it. Yeah.
We've received a lot of requests for this case. And it took me a little while to compile it. It's an absolutely remarkable case, but it is very brutal. It is horrific, but it is also wildly inspiring.
Yeah. All right. I'm ready to be inspired.
Okay.
And terrified.
Yep. You will be both of those things.
Very good.
Today, we are beginning our roller coaster of a case on Sunday, December 18th, 1994, when 27-year-old Alison Botha's life was irrevocably changed. And I'll mention now that there's recently been an insane update in this case, which is why I thought it was somewhat timely and important to cover now.
Okay.
It was 1 a.m. on December 18th, 1994, in Guibera, South Africa. Guibera, which was formerly known as Port Elizabeth, which would have been much easier for me to pronounce, is located in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa on the western side of Algoa Bay. It's a major seaport, the sixth most populous city in South Africa, and is the cultural, economic, and financial hub of the Eastern Cape.
What is it called? Goiba?
Oh yeah, Guibera. So listen to how it's spelled. G-Q.
Yeah, no.
E.
What is it, Irish?
B-E-R-A-H.
G-Q. E-R.
E-B-E.
E-B-E-R-R-R-H-A.
R-H-A. And I looked it up and practiced, and I wrote it phonetically. G-U-Y-B-A-R-E-H-U-H. Guibera.
Yogi Berra.
That was so simple yet effective.
Yes.
Okay, so I mentioned it. It's the sixth most populous city in South Africa, and it's a hub. It's a financial, economic, cultural hub. Okay. On that December evening in what was then Port Elizabeth, Alison was in her car looking for a parking spot not too far away from her apartment, having enjoyed a beautiful day out with friends on the beach, followed by a spontaneous evening out. She had just given one of her friends a ride home, and she knew that when she got back, parking would be difficult, as it always was at that late hour in Alison's apartment complex, which reminds me of college.
Yeah.
Right? Like right where I used to live, parking was absolutely impossible. So Alison was quite relieved to have found a parking spot just under a tree about 32 feet away from her front door. Major score.
Yeah.
But as she happily backed up her car, which she affectionately referred to as Reginald, a sudden rush of warm air brushed against her skin, thick and unsettling, like a ghostly breath. Because for some reason that Alison couldn't process in that immediate moment, the car door just swung open. And in that one confusing moment, that fleeting instant, time itself seemed to stop as awareness began to creep into her consciousness, plunging her into an abyss of uncertainty and fear, and forever altering the trajectory of her life in ways she could never have imagined. Because out of the darkness appeared a tall, scrawny man with light blonde hair wearing
you called him scrawny. Fuck this guy.
Fuck him.
Yeah.
Wearing a t-shirt and track pants, suddenly pressing the edge of a cold knife against her pulsing throat, whispering, "Move over or I'll kill you." Alison, unable to fully process the gravity of the sudden situation, instinctively complied with the man who now seemed to be controlling her fate. She shifted over to the passenger seat as her hands gripped a bag of freshly laundered clothing that she had to move over and off the seat. Its clean, crisp scent posing a stark contrast to the rising sense of dread that now permeated the air as primal fear tightened around her. "You live in number 1, don't you?" the scrawny man asked. So he'd been watching her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Susan," she lied. He said his name was Clinton. Also a lie. "Why don't you just let me get out and take the car?" Alison asked, her voice steady despite the fact that she could hardly hear her own voice above the pounding of her heart.
Oh my God, yeah.
She figured if she made it easy for him to just steal the car, he wouldn't need to complicate the matter by holding her hostage. But the man, later identified as Franz de Toy, had other plans, and they had nothing to do with stealing her car. With unnerving calmness, Franz informed Alison that he was taking her to meet a friend, casually phrasing it as if he were a parent telling a child that they needed to run a quick errand. Sweet, almost as if the child had a choice, yet fully aware that it was entirely his decision. But Alison was no naive child. She knew. She knew deep in her gut, as a primal instinct screamed, that this was far from a simple social call. Now on Main Street, Franz located his friend, a stocky 19-year-old man named Tians Kruger, who stood waiting for him dressed entirely in black. In a matter of seconds, Tians was in the car, too, and the three of them were heading off to an unknown destination. At least it was unknown to Alison, because the car suddenly intentionally stopped, suggesting that the men arrived wherever they seemingly intended to take their hostage. Franz stopped the car in an isolated seaside area called Nordhoek, just beyond the University of Port Elizabeth. After switching off the engine and killing the lights, the tension in the air grew unbearable. Summoning all the strength she had left, Alison asked, "Now what?" Franz, his voice disturbingly calm and almost pleasant, responded, "But I thought you would have realized we want sex." With that, Tian silently stepped out of the car, lit a cigarette, and walked away, leaving Alison alone with her original abductor. Then, in a chilling contrast to his vile intentions, Franz, still speaking in that hauntingly unsettling, pleasant voice, turned to Alison and asked, "Are you going to fight?" Then he ordered Alison to remove her clothing. As she later described in her book called I Have Life, it felt as though she was undressing someone else's body, completely disconnected from the horrifying reality of what she was experiencing. When confronted with overwhelming fear, helplessness, or violence, the mind can create this dissociative state as a coping mechanism. And this mental defense serves as a protective barrier that enables people to endure experiences that might otherwise be too painful to process.
So fascinating.
Isn't it?
Oh my God. That the brain does that? Yeah.
Exactly. Nature can be cruel, but in this way, it can also be merciful.
Mm-hmm.
Franz then forced Alison to perform oral sex on him. Once done, he violently yanked her head up by her hair and then shoved his face between her legs. "Does your boyfriend do this to you? Do you like it?" he taunted in that eerily pleasant voice, which is one of the most unnerving sort of parts to this, is that creepy, chill.
Reminds me of, I've mentioned this before, but the Gears of War commercial with that song in the background from Donnie Darko.
Yes, yes. Or there was a scene from the movie, I think it was called The Rock with Nicolas Cage, or Face Off with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta back in the day. It was a brutal killing scene, and Somewhere Over the Rainbow was the score.
Oh, yeah.
Then, with sadistic satisfaction, Franz bit Alison's exposed breast and smiled as her skin instantly bruised a deep purple. And after that, he raped her. Throughout the horrific ordeal, Alison kept her hands firmly on the roof of her car as she refused to touch the man who was violating her, a quiet act of defiance as she endured his barbaric assault, which I love to think of her getting that small victory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to address something here because I think it's important. So in Alison's book, she explains how she felt deeply ashamed by her body's natural, involuntary response during the assault.
Mm-hmm.
And felt as though her body had betrayed her because while she was being assaulted, her body responded involuntarily, almost like a reflex, and it produced lubrication. Now, this reaction is actually not uncommon amongst survivors of sexual assault, but often leaves them feeling confused and ashamed.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to understand that vaginal lubrication or even full-blown orgasm during an assault is purely a biological response and does not reflect desire, consent, or arousal.
I could see that as like a defense mechanism also.
Absolutely.
The body does different things for different reasons.
Right. But you can understand, obviously, the psychological complexity involved when that happens.
Yeah.
So studies show that around 5% of rape survivors experience orgasm during their assault. And this does not mean that they enjoyed their trauma. It just means that their bodies reacted involuntarily to the physical stimulation, like getting goosebumps or laughing when you're tickled. I've encountered this many times working with survivors of sexual abuse, so I wanted to take a moment to address it. A big part of their guilt and shame is how their body responded during the assault. So this is a really important conversation that I've had so many times with various survivors. So I wanted to bring it to, everyone here. After Franz finished assaulting Alison like the decrepit piece of shit he is, he then asked Tayons if he, quote, also wanted to have sex with the lovely lady. To which Tayons replied, no, I want to fuck the bitch. And with that...
Oh, wow, you're so cool,
so
dude.
tough.
Jesus.
And with that horrific sentiment, he entered the car and took his turn. But after a few moments, Tayons pulled up his pants, got out of the car, and announced that he couldn't do it. So instead, he pulled out an 8-inch hunting knife and asked, what do you think Umnik would want us to do with her? Umnik was their little code name for Satan. And without hesitation, Franz replied through a guttural laugh, I think he wants us to kill her. Suddenly,
Terrifying.
In a violent flash, Franz straddled Alison and began choking her with his bare hands until her bowels evacuated and she slipped into unconsciousness. Then, after she regained consciousness, Alison somehow found herself lying on the cold ground outside her car amidst broken bottles and scattered beer cans. She was naked, disoriented, and incredibly vulnerable, to say the least. And crouched above her was one of the men, looming in the pitch black night, methodically slitting her throat.
Ugh.
All I could see was an arm moving above my face, Alison later recalled. Left and right, left and right. His movements were making a sound.
Oh, my God.
A wet sound. It was the sound of my flesh being slashed open. He was cutting my throat with the knife again and again and again.
Did she say it hurt or no?
No, we're getting into that right now.
Yeah.
Incredibly. She counted 8 brutal back and forth movements, but astonishingly, whether through divine intervention, a rush of endorphins, or some force beyond comprehension that we haven't even thought about, Alison felt no pain. What she did feel, however, was a deep, visceral terror.
Oh, yeah.
In her book, she reflected, quote, perhaps this is what a buck feels like when a predator wrenches it from midair to the ground before snapping its neck. As Alison instinctively raised her hand to her throat, her fingers sank into the gaping wound, vanishing into the raw, open flesh.
You having fun right now?
Me? No.
This is horrible.
It's horrific, Tank. No, I'm not having fun.
This is the worst case we've ever done.
It is. It is. She is so open about her experience and with the details. And she wrote her book, which I absolutely encourage everybody to read. And she's been on various shows and interviews. And she is direct as direct can be, like I'm being right now.
Like Giselle Pellico.
Like Giselle Pellico.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Good for you, Tank.
Yeah.
I like that you made that connection. She felt the horrifying depth of the slash, a chilling realization of the extent of her injuries. Then, seeing that Alison was still alive and that one of her legs was twitching, her assailant stabbed her repeatedly in the pubic area and abdomen in excess of 37 times. In that moment of sheer terror and a need to survive, Alison made the quick decision to play dead, hoping that her attackers would finally leave. It was a brilliant move because Franz and Tayons began walking away, assuming that they completed their grimly task. In fact, as they left, Alison overheard them speaking in Afrikaans, saying, "Do you think she's dead?" And the other one coldly replying, "No one can survive that." But they were wrong.
Yeah.
And as they got back into Alison's car and left her on the side of the road, presumably to die, Alison did something extraordinary. Pop quiz.
Oh.
What did she do?
All right.
A, she wrote the names of her assailants in the sand using her own blood so the world would know who did this to her. B, she released one rebel yell and was overheard by a student at the nearby college. C, she closed her wound using the shoelaces from her sneakers.
Wrote the names.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she did. She also wrote, "I love Mom" in the sand.
Just in case.
Final message to the most important person in her life. The incredible strength and foresight it took to perform that type of a gesture in the face of unimaginable terror
Yeah,
is
that's
absolutely
nuts.
astounding.
Yeah.
Even in the darkest depths of despair, with her body rapidly failing her, she made sure to leave something behind, a message of love and justice, when death would have seemed almost certain at that point. Almost certain. Because here's the thing. Incredibly, Alison did not look at imminent death as being inevitable. In fact, quite the opposite. In what she describes as a profound spiritual moment, Alison not only felt no pain, but experienced a fantastic lightness, as she referred to it, that lifted her spirit from her severely injured body and let her know that if she wanted to live, she could. And it was as simple as that. She looked down at her broken body and realized that she had a choice and was being presented with two options: to embrace this peaceful, pain-free realm that she was floating in, or return to her body and fight for her life. And in this moment, a strange blend of confusion and clarity washed over Alison, igniting a fierce resolve within her. It empowered her to make a crucial decision: to fight for her life with every ounce of strength she could muster and reclaim her body from the grips of death. Just as the weight of her determination settled, blinding headlights suddenly swept across her face, jolting her back into reality and anchoring her once more to her physical self. With her decision to live now made, Alison pushed herself off her stomach where she'd been lying. Okay, so she was lying on her stomach on the pavement and up onto her hands and knees. That's when she felt something wet and slick against her abdomen. Looking down, she was confronted by the horrific sight of her intestines spilling from her body.
Stabbed 37 times, right?
Yep. Panic surged through her, but Alison knew she couldn't let her insides trail behind her like a grotesque banner of defeat. So, with trembling hands, she seized a denim shirt that was lying nearby and wrapped her intestines tightly within its fabric, pressing the makeshift package against her stomach as if to literally hold her shattered body together. With sheer determination, she began to crawl, dragging herself forward for what felt like an eternity, but in reality was about 50 feet.
Wow, that is a long time.
It is.
To crawl.
A voice whispered in her mind, tempting her with the false promise of peace if she just surrendered. And for a quick moment, the idea of giving up seduced her. But the thought of giving up wound up frightening her even more than the prospect of death itself. So she kept fighting, and she stood up. But it was strange.
Stood up?
Yes, listen to this, though. It was strange when she stood up, because as she somehow managed to rise to her feet and face forward, she was somehow inexplicably staring up at the night sky. How could this be? Well, Alison's neck had been severed so deeply
Oh my God.
she was nearly decapitated, and her head, which evidently was barely tethered to her body, lolled back when she stood up, forcing her gaze skyward rather than ahead. So she
Like
was
a fucking Pez dispenser?
yes,
That is
exactly.
horrible.
What an awful visual, but that is precisely right.
Oh my God, I can't believe
What you're hearing.
you said what you just said.
But you know what Alison did? In a stunning display of sheer willpower, this extraordinary woman, this goddess of survival, this phoenix rising from the ashes of unimaginable
She left
brutality,
the Phoenix behind a long time ago.
reached up, grasped her own hair, and physically screwed her head back on straight. And she kept fighting. By this point, Alison was slipping in and out of consciousness, her vision blurry and fading, but she kept fighting. Then, suddenly, as if conjured by a mirage, Marine Drive materialized before her, so she could hear the rumble of a car engine drawing near. The warmth radiating from the vehicle enveloped her as it came to a halt beside her. And in that moment, for the first time since the tall, scrawny, blonde-haired stranger entered her car 90 minutes earlier, a wave of genuine elation washed over Alison. Help had finally arrived. More and more cars began to appear, and soon Alison found herself surrounded by people. The sight of her
Oh,
was so unbelievably terrifying that one woman let out a blood-curdling scream as if straight out of a horror film.
I would pass out.
Yeah. And no judgment on that.
I saw a guy in New York City once who was walking around. He was definitely on drugs, but he was also covered in blood.
Oh my God.
And oh my God. I mean, I went and looked. I wanted to see, like, obviously if he was okay, but he was not okay. But he was also unapproachable because he was like raging out. I don't know. Seeing people that are hurt bothers me.
Of course.
Obviously. Yeah.
And you're not alone.
But seeing somebody like that.
Well, that's what makes this next part of the story that much more extraordinary. Because I would venture to say the majority of people, maybe medical professionals aside, or perhaps maybe people who are just like very, what's the word, composed, but like disciplined, like maybe somebody in the military, for example, who's like a little hardened, would have that reaction that you had, right? It's like almost like an instinct, like you're freaked out, you freeze or you back up or whatever. And most of the people did that here. But amidst the chaos, Alison could hear the calming voice of one young man in control telling her to relax. Introducing himself, which is one of my favorite parts of this story, by the way, that he was just such a human being and treated her like a human being, like introducing himself before he like put his hands on her. I love it. I just love that respect and that humanity. He held her hand. He reassured her. He comforted her. And that young man was 20-year-old Tian Ehlert, who, along with 7 of his friends, had been on vacation and happened to be returning back from a night out at a club. It was around 2:45 a.m. when Tian noticed a figure lying in the road along Marine Drive, completely naked except for a denim shirt pressed against her abdomen. Her head was twisted unnaturally, and as he approached, he could hear her throat gargling as she struggled to breathe. Tian quickly took charge and instructed the panicked crowd to return to their cars as their screaming was more hindrance than help. Having just completed his first year of veterinary school, Tian wasn't squeamish and had a basic understanding of anatomy. He immediately checked Alison's pulse and examined the color of her tongue to assess how much blood she lost, which, given the circumstances, was considerable.
So much.
Noticing that either her thyroid or trachea had been protruding from the gaping wound in her neck, Tian tore off his shirt and applied pressure to the area. Someone then began to shine a flashlight to help him see as he worked, focused, calm, and methodical. Tian helped Alison regulate her breathing and instructed one of his friends to massage her legs to keep circulation going and to warm her up. Another person brought a blanket from their car to cover her. Tian began asking Alison questions about her attackers, instructing her to squeeze his hand once for yes and twice for no. Sensing, however, that Alison was fading, Tian decided to tell her that he felt she had the most beautiful green eyes he'd ever seen. And this simple, heartfelt comment gave Alison the strength to hold on. Later, Alison recalled that she fought to keep her eyes open for Tian since he made it a point to compliment them, even as her guts were spilling out all over him. So much humanity, though, in this case, you know?
Yeah.
Tian stayed by Alison's side and tended to her on the road for 2 long hours until emergency services finally arrived. No clue why it took them so long. No clue. Even during the ambulance ride to the hospital, he refused to leave Alison and talked to her the entire time, offering comfort and reassurance. His presence, calm and steady, became a lifeline for Alison in those critical moments.
Yeah.
Pop quiz.
Okay.
What do many hospitals in South Africa call the emergency room? A, panic pavilion. B, life lounge. C, casualty unit.
Panic pavilion? Panic at the pavilion? Life lounge or casualty unit?
Yeah.
Casualty unit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I knew it wasn't fucking panic
Oh,
pavilion.
well, I came up with that. I guess I went too far. Yeah, casualty unit. But why?
The freak out room.
But why casualty? You don't want casualties. You want survivors. Let's call it the survivor unit.
Well, a casualty is not always someone who dies, right?
Oh, really? I thought it was.
I
So
don't
maybe
know.
that's my
It
misunderstanding.
could be just someone who's gravely affected by something. Let me just look really quick.
Okay.
Casualty. Serious or fatal accident.
Oh, interesting.
A person or thing injured, lost, or destroyed. So, and then a military person lost through death, wounds, injury, sickness, internment, or capture, or through being missing in action. So,
Okay, so it depends on the context.
yes.
When they arrived at the casualty unit at 4:30 a.m., Alison was immediately taken in while Tian was ushered away. Dr. Volodya Angelov, one of the treating physicians, later remarked that in his 16 years of practice, he had never encountered a patient like Alison. He said she looked and felt like an actual corpse. In terms of her injuries, Alison's neck had been viciously slashed from ear to ear 16 separate times, severing both her trachea and thyroid in half. Her larynx was detached and all the major veins in her neck had been cut.
Really? I was wondering about that.
Well, miraculously, the most critical arteries, as well as her voice box, remained unharmed.
Like the carotid artery was obviously not
correct,
cut.
Because had any of the critical arteries been severed, she would have bled out instantly, within minutes.
Yeah.
Incredibly, Alison also had an aspirated on her blood, which is something that Dr. Angelov described as nothing short of miraculous, despite considering himself a man of science.
Yeah.
After a 3-hour surgery, Alison emerged from the operating room, still alive and physically pieced back together. Later that afternoon, police constable Nadia Swainpole arrived at the hospital with a thick black book filled with hundreds of suspect photographs. She asked Alison if she thought that she could identify her attackers. And Alison recalls thinking, "This is the moment I've been waiting for." She's such a badass.
Yeah, she is.
As the detective flipped through the pages, Alison stopped her because there, at the bottom of the page, was Franz de Toy. And when Alison clearly pointed him out, you know what the detective responded with?
What?
"I knew it."
Really?
Because get this. It turned out that Franz and Teons had been out on bail for 2 other rape charges, including the assault of a 21-year-old pregnant woman. At the time, South Africa's lenient bail laws allowed violent offenders like them to be granted bail without properly considering the severity of their crimes, which tragically led to Alison's abduction and brutal attack outside her home.
Why?
Your fucking guess is as good as mine.
Why can't they figure out a system that works?
Yeah, because this ain't it.
I get it. You don't want somebody who's been profiled and identified as a suspect to be held in jail for 3 years because they don't have $200 to play bail.
Exactly. And
I get that.
It's innocent until, proven guilty.
But,
right?
like if I've said before, if there should be a scale. It should be like, how bad is the crime and how sure are you that they did it?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a petty crime and you're like, I actually have no idea, yes, let them go. If you catch somebody in the act of rape, they don't fucking get bail.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Why can't they figure that out?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a financial matter, a space matter. You know what I mean?
No, there would be no space matters if they let people who they weren't sure off.
Right.
If they were just picked up on the street because they matched the description of somebody.
Yeah, it's gotta be better than
that robbed a fucking deli. Right. Yeah, I get it. You don't want people out robbing delis, but you definitely don't want people like this out on the street because you can't figure out how to make a law that works for all scenarios.
I'm in full agreement with you, Tank.
Get it together.
On that note,
pop quiz. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, King. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, what percentage of abductions by strangers occur within a quarter mile of the victim's home? Nearly 15%. That was A. B, nearly 50%. C, nearly 80%.
Abductions?
Yes.
That occur within a quarter mile of a person's home. 80?
Very good. You have gotten every single pop quiz correct so far.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because there's this statistic that 80% of accidents, I don't know if it's actually 80, but it's close, happen within 2 miles of home.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's where you spend 80% of your time.
Right.
So, of course, it's going to be.
It's usually also where victims feel the safest. And it's not to say that what happens to them is their fault.
No, I don't. I disagree with that. I don't think it's because people let their guard down. I think it's just a matter of physical presence. You can't be.
I mean, that makes so much sense.
How often are you 100 miles away from home?
If you listen to Alison on interviews, and I think she's being way too hard on herself.
Yeah.
She's like, I was so irresponsible that night. It was the middle of the night. My doors were unlocked. I was not paying attention. I hate that she talks about the night in that way.
It's her fault.
Yeah, I hate that she does that. But it's interesting. I guess that's maybe what made me think that, people have their guard down because that's her implication.
Yeah. No, they definitely do. I just don't think that's the main culprit. I think the main reasoning for that is that it's just because it's where you spend most of your time.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Both Franz and Tions were quickly apprehended, held at the murder and robbery unit in North End, and crucially denied bail this time.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Alison was placed in intensive care for 8 days as a seasoned investigator of 16 years named Melvin Humple took over the case. And it was Melvin who delivered the very words that Alison had been praying to hear for in terms of Franz and Tions. And he said, "We've got him."
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was going to say we, not we've, but.
Okay. And everything after that began to move very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Alison, the South African Phoenix, as I'm calling her.
Green-eyed South African Phoenix.
Green-eyed South African Phoenix was discharged from the hospital on December 31st and took an active role in the ongoing investigation into her attack.
Amazing.
In fact, and this is incredible, she became a national symbol as one of the first rape survivors in South Africa to publicly identify herself.
Wow.
Another connection with Giselle Pellico, right?
Yeah,
that bravery, right? Giselle Pellico being like, I'm not going to be anonymous. No way.
You're not going to make me feel shameful. I didn't
This is not my cross
wrong.
to bear. Exactly. Yeah. Thankfully, the investigation was proceeding swiftly as a result of both suspects confessing to all the sordid details involved in the attack. Tions even led police back to the crime scene and retrieved the very hunting knife that was used to cut Alison's throat and stab her many times.
You left it?
Casually admitting to Melvin Humple that he didn't leave it, the same knife the morning after the attack to eat breakfast with Alison's dried blood still on the blade.
Yeah, dude, in jail forever.
I mean, throw away the key.
Yeah.
And Franz also admitted that he and Tions had been planning to abduct and murder another woman the day before their arrest, who they were planning to toss off the Van Stadens Bridge. I apologize if I mispronounced that. It might be Van Stadens Bridge.
Or Van Stadens.
Could be.
Who knows?
And I have no doubt that those perpetrators, despicable pieces of shit, would have gone through with it had they not been caught.
100%.
Right. On March 3rd at 10:30 a.m., Alison went to the murder and robbery squad in Port Elizabeth to identify her attackers in a lineup. According to the law at the time, the victim was required to physically approach the suspect, listen to this shit, place her hand on his shoulder, and identify him while a photo was taken of that.
Why?
Because they want to see that it truly was the victim, not being coached, making the identification. Detective Humple, however, recognized how emotionally cruel and psychologically damaging this could be for Alison.
Yeah.
And for the first time in South African history, Officer Humple used a one-way glass partition instead, allowing Alison to remain unseen while making her identifications.
1994.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Out of the 14 men presented before her, Alison knew within 13 seconds that her assailants were number 6 and 13, Franz de Toy and Tions Kruger.
Mm-hmm.
Their trial, dubbed the Noordhoek Ripper case, began in the Supreme Court in Port Elizabeth on June 12, 1995, with Judge Chris Jansen presiding.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
So the one-way mirror dates back to 1903.
Not here, it didn't.
So that's a long time to be doing that to people.
Yep. And walking into the courthouse, Officer Humple told Franz and Tions to notice, this is insane in a good way, how he didn't handcuff them. And that was because he hoped that they would try to run so that he would have a reason to shoot them.
Oh my God.
Isn't that wild? So human, though. I mean, horrible, that he wants to shoot people, but relatable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Key testimonies were provided by various witnesses, including Tion Ehlert, the man who saved her,
Yeah.
Dr. Volodya Angelov, multiple psychologists, Franz's wife, who was married, the two other survivors who the perpetrators had raped, the ones that they were out on bail for attacking,
Yep.
and Alison herself. Both Franz and Teons also testified during the proceedings as the court sought to fully understand the extent of their depravity.
Yeah.
Pop quiz.
Ooh, here we go.
What's the first thing that Franz did when he took the stand? A, he apologized to Alison for what he'd done to her. B, he apologized to the judge for a shitty haircut. C, he apologized to Umnik for not finishing the job.
B.
Yes, you're 4 for 4.
Fucking nailing it.
You are en fuego.
Yeah, it just seems like a misguided thing to say to ingratiate yourself to someone who's probably like, dude, I don't give a fuck about your haircut.
So well said. Trying to ingratiate himself, trying to be like mano y mano, like man to man. Like, I apologize for how I look. There's inadequate facilities, he said. I couldn't get a decent haircut.
Yeah, sorry about that.
After that,
We should just cut his head off.
After that, Franz began his testimony by painting a vivid picture of his childhood. He recounted growing up in Aliwal North and being raised by a strict Christian father who was a police officer, ironically, as well as a religiously devout mother. Down the line, Franz's father went on to tragically take his own life as a result of what his son had done.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
There's always a ripple effect.
Oh, yeah.
Always. As a child, Franz almost immediately fell in with the wrong crowd at school. Daga smokers, hippies, and surfers, which is what he referred to as being, the bad crowd, and fell under the influence of the teenage witch who introduced him to the world of Satanism.
Sabrina?
Not Sabrina, but I just wanted to say teenage witch, and convinced him that demonic forces were real. It was basically a girl, I think she may have been a little older than him, who was like doing the shit I was doing in high school, to be honest. Seances and whatever.
Hey, man, why'd you kill that girl? Why'd you rape and try and cut her head off? I was...
in high school,
I was hanging out with like hippies and stuff like that.
Surfers.
And fucking surfers, like, you know how they are. And I just took her to the max.
At trial, Franz attempted to suggest that his long-standing belief in Satanism drove him to commit his crimes. But in doing so, what he really did was reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of Satanism itself.
Yeah.
The notion that Satanists inherently engage in violent or criminal behavior stems from historical moral panic, or the satanic panic, right?
Yes.
Which took place in the 80s, 90s.
Ricky Kasich.
Yes.
The Psychopedia I did. It was like the second one. Go over to patreon.com/psychopediapod if you want to hear me do a case.
Talking about the satanic panic.
Say you love Satan.
In reality, modern forms of Satanism are not about worshiping the devil or promoting violence. Rather, they emphasize independent thinking, self-empowerment, and individualism. Those are like the tenets of Satanism, as I've come to understand it. Followers don't worship Satan as a deity, but instead use him as a symbol of rebellion against arbitrary authority and advocate for personal freedom and rational self-interest. Mm-hmm. So Franz's suggestion that Satanism fueled his crimes was more of an excuse than an accurate reflection of the belief system, which focuses on personal autonomy rather than violence. But making up excuses for abhorrent behavior was kind of always his thing. When he was 13 years old, Franz set fire to one of his school buildings and claims that it was a result of listening to heavy metal music.
Oh, he's just blaming everybody.
That old chestnut. After that incident, Franz got expelled from school, which caused his entire family to uproot and move.
Why?
93 miles away to avoid the shame and embarrassment that he brought upon all of them. But Franz just brought trouble and havoc to his new location, which is typically how it goes. As such, he got expelled from that school as well, which prompted him to drop out of school early and join the army. Because it turns out that giving a psychopath a gun to help instill discipline only deepened his growing fascination with the dark side of life.
Great solution.
And after leaving the military, which he wasn't there for long, Franz was never able to truly settle into civilian life. He fathered a daughter with a woman, but ended that relationship almost immediately, claiming that his wife no longer satisfied him. His professional life was equally unstable as he moved from one menial job to another with no sense of direction or solid source of income. He also began to dabble in petty crime, as well as started what South Africans refer to as a shebeen. Pop quiz.
Shabeezness.
What is a shebeen? A covert exotic animal trade network. B, a sex trafficking ring. C, an unlicensed bar.
Shabeen. See?
Yes. You are crushing it.
Do we have any more pop quizzes?
I think we do. I think we might have one left. I could be wrong.
I just want to do 100% one time ever in my entire history of doing this podcast.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
A shebeen is like a speakeasy. It's my understanding. It's like cheap, tax-free, questionable alcohol.
Yeah.
By 1993, Franz remarried, had another kid, and rededicated himself fully to his version of Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
Then 1 year later, in 1994, Franz met his soon-to-be partner in crime, Teons Kruger, after Teons just so happened to move in with his aunt across the street from where Franz had been living. And why did Teons have to move into his aunt's flat? Because he needed a place to recover from a self-inflicted shotgun wound to his foot.
Wow.
Anyway, after Frick and Frack met, they forged an immediate bond over their shared interest in bathtub hooch, non-consensual sexual violence, mock satanic rituals, and quote-unquote intellectual discussions about demons.
Great basis for a friendship.
Again, how the fuck do these people find each other? I can't find one other mom in my circle who matches my freak. You know what I mean?
I asked somebody at a party if they like Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, yeah.
And they go, yeah, he's okay. Why?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about him for the next hour, but I don't think you're on that level.
Exactly. But these fuckers find each other?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wild. Fast forward to the night of Alison's abduction, and demonic possession allegedly played a key role in the horror that ensued, because Franz insisted during trial that a demon named Incubus possessed him and commanded him to rape and kill a pretty woman.
The band?
Not the band. Franz went on to further assert that Incubus rendered him sexually insatiable while also granting him telekinetic powers. Having spotted a woman, Alison Botha, near an apartment complex the night before the incident, Franz set his sights on her as the target of Incubus's instructions.
So it was only one day that he was following her before he made the move.
That's correct.
Wow.
And it was this grotesque justification that Franz's defense centered on, attributing his depravity to supernatural influence, i.e. insanity, rather than his own intentional behavior.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Teon's upbringing, it was sadly marked by poverty, neglect, and emotional deprivation. His father, described as a drug-addicted philanderer, abandoned Teons' mother and was locked up behind bars before he was even born.
Wow.
His mother eventually remarried, 3 times in fact, and her latest husband was no better than Teons' father and was a violent man who took Teons and his mother to live in the remote Titicaca forest, where he worked as a laborer for the forestry department.
What was the name of that forest?
Titicaca.
Oh, better. Even better.
Teons repeatedly tried to escape the harsh conditions of his life in the forest, and after several failed attempts, finally succeeded. He found refuge with a Black family who took him in and gave him the sense of care and community that had previously been denied. However, his decision to live with this family resulted in his being shunned by the small white community that he had fled from.
Oh, was he Black?
No, he was white, but a Black family took him in.
What about Franz?
White.
Because I'm just realizing right now that back then it was still very apartheid.
Right.
Terrible relations.
Exactly. So now not only was he sort of ostracized for breaking social norms, but Teons also faced relentless mockery from his peers for being, I think I read it somewhere, like he wasn't really accepted in the white community anymore or the Black one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't find his place as a result.
Almost, yeah.
He was also relentlessly mocked for which of the following reasons? Pop quiz.
Pop quiz.
A, for taking his sister to junior prom.
Mm-hmm.
B, for displaying a monk-like pattern of hair loss by age 17. C, for having a third nipple.
Wow. All very interesting possibilities. Taking his sister to junior prom.
Mm-hmm.
Balding.
Mm-hmm.
Nipple.
Mm-hmm. Cream.
Nipple cream, the greatest invention of all time. A.
I'm so sorry. No. I'm sorry, my
See.
friend. Yes. See.
Hey, I still got an A+.
You sure did. Absolutely. You aced this. Just not this particular one.
Keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah, move on.
So his nickname was,
There shouldn't have been 6 pop quizzes anyway,
I'm
by the
sorry,
way.
but
That's too many.
No. Just, okay, fine. I'll take responsibility.
Okay. It was Satan's fault.
His nickname was, and I may be mispronouncing this, Dre Tietis, which is Afrikaans for 3 tits.
Dre Titties.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Hello, future Patreon.
Hey, 3 titties.
He started abusing drugs and alcohol in his early teens and, like Franz, dropped out of school at a very early age and joined the army. During his national service in 1993, Théons boasted about a particularly horrific event during which he claims to have, quote unquote, blown a woman's head off, something he disturbingly laughed about during trial. According to a man named Dr. Ian Meyer, who's a clinical psychologist who testified at trial, Théons struggled with extremely low self-esteem and was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, a condition that made him highly susceptible to external influence.
Yeah.
This susceptibility, combined with his emotional instability, likely played a role in his ability to be drawn into Franz's twisted actions, because Théons was easy to manipulate and Franz was a master manipulator. Perfect storm. However, according to Dr. Meyer's testimony, in spite of Théons' vulnerability and deeply troubled past, he was still 100% responsible for the heinous crimes he committed.
Sure.
And to address Franz's defense of demonic possession, the prosecution called Colonel Cobus Junker, head of the police's occult-related crime unit, to the stand. And Colonel Junker testified that if Franz had truly been possessed, he wouldn't have been able to recount the details of the crime in such clarity or show a lack of remorse, both of which he displayed during trial, or didn't display during trial. Junker's expert testimony dismantled the defense and reinforced the court's view that Franz was fully responsible for his actions.
Oh, he's saying that if he was possessed, he would be exhibiting remorse because it's like, I can't believe I did this. I didn't even do this. I wasn't there, but I did it. Oh my God.
Exactly.
He was just like, yeah, fucking, I did it, whatever.
He's making excuses. I had a shitty childhood. A demon made me do it. Now, it is possible that Franz struggled with something like schizophrenia, if he's really, if we believe that he was really hearing voices. But here's why, to me, and my completely unprofessional opinion, it seems unlikely. Because Franz was just full of shit. And I don't believe for one second that he actually ever really heard demonic voices in his head or believed he was doing incubus's bidding.
Yeah.
And you know what?
What?
The judge didn't think so either. Because on August 7th, 1995, in a packed courtroom, Judge Jansen rejected the defense that incubus had driven Franz to commit the crimes. Similarly, while Théons may have been influenced by Franz, as his defense attorney explained, the judge did not believe that he was merely, quote, a slavish follower. Moreover, Théons in particular showed zero remorse for his horrific deeds, and it was clear that both men had carefully planned and executed their quote-unquote dastardly deeds simply because they suck ass. Their lack of conscience and remorse and the cold-blooded manner in which they tortured Alison, as well as the 2 other survivors who testified, was indicative of their inherent evilness.
Yes, I agree.
According to the judge, both Franz and Théons posed a great danger to society. Ergo, Franz de Toy and Théons Kruger were found guilty of their various charges and sentenced to life in prison at St. Albans Prison. And listen to what the judge said after the court settled down, because everybody was like, there was a lot of hoopla after their guilty verdict was read.
Hooting and hollering and such.
Exactly. Quote, I also make the following order. I insist that this judgment be typed up and 2 copies sent to the relevant authorities at the Department of Correctional Services to be placed on the files of the 2 accused. It must be clear that if at any time in the future there is consideration for parole, it was my intention that these 2 men be removed from society for the rest of their natural lives and that they should spend it behind bars.
Yeah.
And at this stage, Alison felt that justice had been served until it wasn't. Remember I mentioned that in the beginning of the case that there was a very recent update?
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of why I wanted to do this case now.
Yeah.
Here comes the update. Incredibly, disgustingly, on July 4th, 2023, after 28 years behind bars, Frick and Frack were released on parole.
Both of them?
As a result of the amended Correctional Services Act, yes. This amendment mandates that offenders sentenced to life imprisonment between August 1st, 1993 and September 30th, 2004 be considered for parole after serving a minimum of 12 years and 4 months, regardless of the nature of their crimes.
And why did they do that?
I don't know. I don't know if it was some kind of like, what's it called? Clemency? Is that the right word? No.
No, it's stupid. Is what it is.
It is stupid.
To go back and say, hey, no matter what, if you were jailed between what are you exposed to asbestos? You may be entitled to financial compensation. Get fucking lost.
Yeah.
These blanket rules, they really, obviously we need rules, yes. But there need to be caveats.
Amen.
In these rules.
This spits directly in the face of all survivors, including, obviously, Alison Botha.
Well, was there some judge that was working that was like mega corrupt at that time, maybe?
No, I don't believe so. I didn't come across that in my research.
Okay.
Allison's recent attorney, Tanya Cohen, has argued that proper procedures were not followed when Frick and Frack were released on parole, and that the DCS disregarded and stomped all over Allison's rights entirely.
Yeah.
Although the men served the minimum time required under the amended act, parole does not have to be automatic. It just has to be considered. So that's something I should have made clearer. Oh. Sorry.
Are they outside my house?
During the parole consideration process, the Department of Correctional Services, or DCS as I called it earlier, sorry if that was unclear, is required to evaluate whether offenders are remorseful, rehabilitated, and no longer pose a threat to society. So I guess it's just giving people a second chance if they've earned it.
Yes.
If they show signs of rehabilitation.
So all it was a parole hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
Despite Alison Botha delivering a powerful impact statement during their parole eligibility hearing, in which she expressed how the thought of their release, just the thought, triggered only the second instance of depression in her life, the first being right after her brutal attack, the parole board recommended their release.
What?
Alison had vehemently opposed their parole, stating her belief that the men remained unrehabilitated and could potentially seek revenge.
They almost fucking cut my head off.
Yes. However, the parole board proceeded with their decision without even informing Alison of their decision, disregarding her objections. And Alison, as a result, felt re-victimized by the system's failure to protect her rights and safety.
For sure.
Sadly, though, the notion of female victimization is a common theme in South Africa, where sexual violence against women is systemic and endemic. It is often referred to as the rape capital of the world.
Oh.
There were 42,289 rapes reported in 2019-2020, as well as 7,749 sexual assaults. This translates into about 115 rapes per day, though the actual numbers are likely higher due to underreporting.
Yeah.
The prevalence of these crimes is deeply rooted in gender inequality, poverty, and harmful societal norms, with intimate partner violence being particularly pervasive. A culture of impunity where perpetrators are not held accountable, combined with a justice system that frequently fails survivors, exacerbates this already critical issue.
Wow.
And Alison Botha's devastating case is a stark example of this crisis. Despite her assailant's convictions, both men have been granted parole. What the fuck is that?
So when you said 42,000, it sounded like a lot to me. Do you know how many rapes were reported in 2018?
The year before this, what I said, how many?
No, in the U.S.
Oh, how many?
127,000.
Oh my God.
So their population is estimated to be 63 million people. So 63 million, 60 times 5 would be 300 million, and we have more than that. And 42,000. So we have 3 times more rape. We have 5 times more people, roughly.
Wow.
So it is bad. Yeah. Worse, for sure, over there. And like you said, those are just the ones that are reported.
Exactly. You can bet your bottom dollar it's higher.
Damn, you really do.
I
talk
told
like
you
that,
I
Grandma.
talk like an old lady. I told you. And yes, while Alison has become a symbol of survival and advocacy for women's rights, her case still simultaneously illustrates the deep-rooted issues within the country. Because although South Africa has implemented laws and strategies to combat sexual gender-based violence, or SGBV, such as the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, challenges like police inefficiency and lack of training continue to persist, and violence continues to spread like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
I know we spent a lot of time focusing on the worst day of Alison's life, but I'd like to leave off by highlighting who she is as a human being and the immense inner strength she fought through far beyond the physical trauma.
Let's do it.
Alison's story is not defined solely by the brutality she endured, but by her incredible resilience and the unyielding courage it took to rebuild her life afterward. She didn't just survive, she transformed her pain into a purpose, becoming an advocate for survivors and a symbol of hope for countless people across the globe. What she fought through emotionally and mentally was perhaps even more challenging than the physical recovery. And it's that journey that truly defines the essence of who Alison Botha is. The first few months of Alison's recovery, she understandably struggled a great deal with severe ups and downs, mood swings, depression, and chronic physical discomfort. She began speaking with a therapist who helped and relied heavily upon her mother for emotional support. Simple everyday tasks were exhausting for Alison, emotionally and physically, and her body was just forever physically scarred as well, which was jarring for her to constantly look down at her form and to see a reminder of the worst day of her life.
I have not stopped thinking about her neck.
Yeah. The surgeons did a remarkable job, though.
Yeah.
She stopped working and found dating very difficult, particularly when it came to physical intimacy with men. But eventually, Alison Botha, the green-eyed South African phoenix, rose from her obstacles true to form and built a life that reflects her resilience and strength. She's gone on to get married and have a son. She's also become a successful motivational speaker and has traveled the world to share her story and inspire others. Alison speaks about her ABC method for overcoming life's challenges: attitude, belief, and choice.
Nice.
Core elements that helped her not only to regain control of her life after her ordeal, but to thrive.
Yeah.
In her talks, Alison emphasizes the power of maintaining a positive attitude, the importance of believing in oneself, and the freedom to make choices even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Through her speaking engagements and her book called I Have Life, which I read and recommend, she continues to inspire countless people with her message of survival, hope, and inner strength, reminding us all that, and this is her quote, "There aren't any extraordinary people in this world, just ordinary people. But some of those ordinary people do extraordinary things."
Like her.
And that's the case.
I don't even know what to say. I can't stop thinking about her.
I know.
I want to find her and hug her.
I think about her all the time.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was
a roller coaster, right? That's what I said in the beginning.
I don't know if it was a roller coaster. It was just all down.
No, it wasn't. Look at what she's overcome.
Oh, yeah. Well, then, sorry. It's
a roller coaster goes up and it goes down, and then it brings you around, and you're feeling things and you're experiencing things.
Yeah.
In my mind, unless I have this ride wrong.
Well, yeah, there's usually more than one up and down. By the way, we went to go see Les Mis this past weekend.
Yeah.
Fucking just tears immediately.
Yeah, I know.
So good. The people we went with, the guy was like, I don't know, I just didn't
feel it the way. It's like the Kendrick Lamar guy at your party. Like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I liked Les Mis. It was good. Did you cry?
Were you hyperventilating? Yeah, so would love to know if you have a Tank's Titty or any questions or comments about the case.
Of course I have a Tank's Titty.
Okay, well then let's see it, hear it, whatever you're willing to do with it.
Boy, do I got a Tank's Titty for y'all, okay? This is not a typical Tank's Titty. This is more of like a, I don't even know how to describe it, okay? This one is for you, though. Because I wrote this down for you, specifically.
Oh my God, okay, I've got my listening ears on?
I was maybe listening to an episode, or we were talking about something, or I was reading comments, but we were talking about your hangups with content creation, right? And how you sometimes feel, you were worrying about content fatigue, right? And there was a lot of comments saying like, no, like we would never. But you also said, it was during this week's Patreon episode. I choked that bitch, Unhinged. My favorite episode of Unhinged by far ever of all time.
Same.
I listened to it like 3 times.
It was so good. I definitely rewound multiple parts over and over and over again.
So good. So you were talking about that, and what I realized, maybe this will help you, maybe it won't. It may hurt to hear it, but it shouldn't in the present, maybe just in the past. The reason that you got so burnt out on it was because it was all about you.
Yeah.
I want to look good. I'm on vacation.
Absolutely.
I can't be seen wearing the same clothes. If you make content that is outward focused rather than inward focused, you'll never get tired of it.
Right. Well, that's why I posted myself without makeup and made a whole big thing, because that was my revelation. That was my like aha moment.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh wait, to give more, I have to just hang up myself a little bit here.
And I do, obviously, when I post things, I hope that they like it. I hope that they think I'm funny or whatever.
And you don't post things where you think you look like dog shit either. You know what I mean? Like,
no, but I wouldn't ruin my day over it either.
Right.
Or anybody else's day. But yes, I hope people think I'm funny, etc. But I'm primarily out to make people laugh, not to make them think that I'm funny. You know what I'm saying? Like the difference, it's very subtle. But if you can do that, or if anybody really, that's why it's like a little bit of a different one, because it's directed towards you, but it also could apply to anybody in any situation.
Right.
The more I think about myself, the harder of a day I have all the time, every time.
Well, I like that. I like the idea of creating content. Like I would love to spread awareness or spread information about cases.
Did you see that thing I sent you? The comment that somebody wrote?
Yes, thank you.
Great ideas.
I loved it. I really loved it. I appreciate the feedback. I really do. Listen, I'm learning and growing. I've never been a content creator before.
Yeah.
And honestly, what I love about the podcast is I'm doing what I love, which is like diving deep into cases. Whereas like social media content creation, it's a little more superficial than that. So I'm learning.
Medium.
It is. I'm learning, but I appreciate those words and I will take them to heart.
It's a different medium. If you wrote an article this long, nobody would ever read it. Like this.
Yeah, exactly. It's where it needs to be.
It's perfect for what it is.
For the ear holes.
But yeah, I mean, I hope that anybody that hears this, again, it's not about Instagram. It's about motivation and outcome and what your desired outcome is and what the reason for doing it. So if you're thinking about other people, I feel like my day goes a lot better when I'm thinking of what I could do for other people.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So hopefully my tit helps you.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was for you.
Tres Diaz, or what was it?
Dreas Titis.
Dreas Titis. Very good. Fuck, your short-term memory is insane.
Yeah. No, it's not so good on the long term.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for doing all that work. That must have been a tough case to research. Hey, if you're still here, you're a real one. Really. You made it all the way to the end of the episode.
Thank you.
Thank you for sitting through it with me. You were driving the train. I was just hanging on for dear life.
Extremely important role.
The word today is Phoenix. Okay, so if you're this far into the episode and you're still here, head on over to Instagram, hit the post with a little bit of a, Phoenix comment or whatever. You'll know which post it's going to be, by the way. And that's it. And we'll see you guys at the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Bye.